And and then the other thing that we've discovered, people who do all of this have a great response, implement diet and lifestyle, and are doing so well. And they're walking again, hiking again, biking again, jogging, dancing with their family. And then they sort of forget that they had their inflammatory bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, systemic lupus, multiple sclerosis. And they're out with family and friends, and they're at their nephew's wedding, and they said, like, you know what, I can't refuse the wedding cake. And so they eat some food that they knew would have caused severe problems. And they have severe problems again. And so they have a relapse, see their neurologist, and the neurologist says, see, I told you, diet doesn't work. But what I want everyone to remember is, see, I told you, the foods that were a problem for you are going to be a problem for the rest of your life. So if gluten and dairy are a problem, that's not going to work. If nightshades were a problem, and you were off of them for 6 months to a year, you might in fact be okay with nightshades again. But gluten and dairy are usually the reaction is so severe. If that was a problem for you, that's going to be a lifetime problem.
Have you personally reintroduced any food that was previously you couldn't tolerate?
Yeah, so nightshades are a problem for me. If I have tomatoes occasionally, that's fine. So I'll have fresh tomatoes with my pesto in the summer for a couple of weeks. As long as I don't do it every day for weeks on end, I'm going to be okay. If I do chili in my crock pot, that is okay. If I have Mexican once a week with salsa, that's okay. But I certainly went for a time with no tomatoes, no nightshades. It did much better. If I come to your home...
Do you believe that your gut can heal?
Well, yes, our gut absolutely can heal. However, I will tell everyone that gluten, so the dairy and grain, casein, the protein in dairy, they're structurally very similar. If I have any gluten or dairy, that will trigger my face pain. And so when I travel and I give scientific presentations, I did a scientific meeting last spring, and probably had my guess is egg in a salad dressing. It triggered my trigeminal neuralgia about 6 hours later. Trigeminal neuralgia, these intense electrical pains across my face, was horrible. It was, just really, really very, very painful. And this is so difficult. So when I travel, I'm very, very careful about what I eat. I want to have grilled meat, salad, vegetable oil, olive oil on the side, and a wedge of lemon. Because I was the keynote speaker that had a special speakers dinner. I thought it was going to be safe. I told the wait staff I have this severe reaction to eggs, dairy, and gluten, which would put me in the hospital, and they assured me it would be fine. And when I got that salad with what I thought was a commercial dressing, I thought, should I really do this? And so, I'm like, you know what? I don't care if it's a speaker's banquet or not. Prepared dressings, I know often have egg as one of the constituents. I would much rather have a cup of tea and watch everyone else eat than have my face paint turn on.
Sometimes it's just not worth it.
It's just not worth it. This is another thing that we taught when we put people through the health behavior study, is that I want them to get tuned into their subtle symptoms. And so people who have pain, it is so much easier for us to monitor our environment. If pain gets ramped up, go back and look at your previous 24 hours or up to 48 hours. What was new in your environment that might have been a factor in that flare of your pain? And so it can be very, very instructive. My trigeminal neurologist started during medical school. And for 27 years, it got relentlessly worse, more severe, much, much more difficult to control. I'd gone to many different pain centers around the country trying to deal with this so I could continue working. When I finally created my protocol and revised the modified paleo diet, did food sensitivity testing, realized that eggs are part of the problem, and took them out, my pain became much better controlled. My asthma went away. My psoriasis went away. And of course, my physical strength began to relentlessly improve.
Somebody's asking, once you start the paleo, the Wahls protocol, how long until you start seeing improvement, reverse symptoms?
So in my clinical trials, and we've done many, many different clinical trials starting in 2010. It generally takes 3 months for the fatigue to be measurably reduced. In my clinical practice at the VA, people could begin to tell at a month that things are feeling maybe just a little bit better. And for them, again, mostly it was at 3 months. And if you didn't get picked up at 3 months, it continues to improve. But not everyone will. I would say in my clinical trials, it looks like there's about 30% do not see a statistically significant reduction in fatigue. Why did that 30% not see reduction in fatigue? Would they have been better if we had put them on a ketogenic diet or intermittent fasting or a Mediterranean diet? I'm guessing that depending on the microbes living in your gut, that there will be some day when you could come in, I'll collect some saliva from you, some blood from you, maybe some urine from you. Hopefully we won't have to rely on poop because that's a lot messier to get. And then maybe do a swab to get genetics from you. Use artificial intelligence to analyze all that information, bring you back probably in about 5 weeks, because that's all it takes to get all of that info. And then, excuse me, and then we could say the diets that would be worse for you, of course, standard American diet. And we might say the paleo diet's not going to be the best one for you. It's going to be the Mediterranean diet. We might say the paleo diet's the best one. Mediterranean would be okay. Ketogenic would really not work at all. Low fat would not work at all. And we might then be able to give you a list of supplements that would be most helpful and which exercises would be most helpful. In the meantime, what I can tell you is when we've looked at the study that compares diet interventions that had a fatigue outcome or a quality of life outcome. There were 12 studies comparing a paleo, Mediterranean, low fat, ketogenic, intermittent fasting, calorie restriction, anti-inflammatory diet, and usual diet. And we do something called a network meta-analysis that lets us then analyze all of that data and rank order from most effective to least effective. And we do that to rank disease-modifying drug treatments most effective to least effective. So this is a well-known research technique. And you take the mean effect size, standard deviation, and then a 95% confidence interval. If that 95% confidence interval favors the intervention, then you can say that intervention is good for that issue. So for us then, we found 3 diets that were good for fatigue: paleo, Mediterranean, and low saturated fat, as in swank diet. Paleo was about 40% more effective than Mediterranean or swank diet. For quality of life, there were just two diets, paleo and Mediterranean, and the paleo was twice as effective as Mediterranean. The other diets, they had a favorable effect, so the mean was helpful. Standard deviation was often helpful, at least a little bit, but the 95% confidence interval could slop over into favoring the control.
What do you think about the carnivore diet?
Oh yes, so this is a great conversation. If you look at westernized diets, there's about 320 grams of carbohydrates that we are consuming. And that's a lot of added sugar and a lot of white flour that, accounts for a majority of the calories. Then coming down, the Mediterranean diet has 125 grams of carbs, lots more vegetables, fish, and legumes. And then coming down from that is the paleo diet. In all of our studies, the paleo diet has about 80 grams of carbs. So more, and I'm not into grains or legumes, so these are carbs from vegetables, berries, and fruit. And then if you go to a ketogenic diet, that will reduce down to 30 to 50 grams of carbs, depending on the particular type of ketogenic diet. And then the carnivore diet would have even less, since that's meat, dairy, and honey. There are no case reports, there are no case series, there are no single arm studies. I've reached out to the carnivore people on multiple occasions. I've had Zoom calls with them. And I said, this is really important if we're going to know how to use the carnivore diet in clinical practice. And we've offered, because I have postdocs, I have medical students, we have interns that work in our lab, and they would be happy to take their notes and write this up. So far, we've not been able to do that. So we have no peer-reviewed data that tells us what the outcomes were, what patients are that benefited. So now I'll step back and say, okay, let's look at this from an evolutionary standpoint. We originated our species 250,000 years ago, equatorial Africa. We migrate all across the globe, many different places. And so humans have reproductive success eating a wide variety of things. We don't have, and we're having declining success eating all this sugar and white flour. There are a few societies that eat only meat and animal products. There are some societies in Africa that eat meat, blood, and milk. The folks in the tundra regions eat fish, meat, dried fish, dried whale blubber during the winter, and they have a short season where they do have access to vegetable products. So from an evolutionary standpoint, there are societies that do that. However, I can't guide people on how to do this. I know a couple of the folks who are carnivore champions have used this diet to help people with severe psychiatric illness, schizophrenia, psychoses, schizoaffective, bipolar disorder with success. I'll keep trying to get the carnivore folks to generate some peer-reviewed science so we have more concrete data, but we don't have that yet.
Thank you for sharing.